thing.
Norman,
Yeah,
Norman, I have a follow-up question for you because the
yeah.
part of your comparison that doesn't register for me, and I'm sorry if you've already addressed it and I missed it, but
Mhm.
um, Hamas, unlike slaves, had some power. They had some authority. They are the rulers of Gaza.
They
They're
had
backed.
no. That's
They're
ridiculous.
hold on a second. They're backed by a foreign patron. They have money coming in, and it strikes me they have more freedom of choice than slaves did. I understand there's a long history, I'm very familiar of Hamas trying to moderate its position, accepting a two-state solution tacitly, still being rejected by Israel and the U.S. So I understand that they were put in a really difficult position. That even when they try to engage with diplomacy, they try to engage in a Palestinian unity government. All that gets shunned. I know all that, but still, unlike slaves, they do have some authority. They do rule over the strip.
Look, Aaron, I don't. I get. I understand. You have to play the devil's advocate. I understand that because that's how truth comes out when you play the devil's advocate role, and I have to answer that, and I have to respect that role uh, that you're playing. But it's just very hard for me, and I hope you'll forgive me. It's very hard for me to hear things like that. That Hamas had agency. What kind of agency did it have? 2.2 million people were immured, caged into a concentration camp for 2 decades. Half of those people are children. The water, 97% of the water is poisonous in Gaza. One half of the population is classified as suffering from severe food insecurity.
That's the population. I'm talking about Hamas,
Yeah,
and
but
and and
you
for
got
example, I can tell you.
that's
Hold on, Norman.
yeah.
Norman, Norman,
I'll just answer
one
that.
point. One
That's
point.
the
Just one
reason.
point. Just one point. Of all my friends in Gaza, not a
Mhm.
single one supports Hamas. Um, and so I don't. So
I
accordingly,
don't support Hamas.
okay. So accordingly, I don't then associate Hamas with the civilians of Gaza.
I think that's a good point. I'm going to now, since you brought up that point, I want to just read, if you allow me, on that very point about the relationship between Hamas and the people.
Okay.
Number one, before I get to what I want to read, you speak about Hamas like it's this organization totally apart from the people. Okay? I'm not going to talk about how representative it was. I'm not going to do that because, frankly, I don't even have the information to make a informed judgment. Secondly, I don't think Hamas was ever given a chance. It's like telling me in 1990 the Sandinistas were defeated in the election. Yes, they were defeated in the election. They started out as a popular group because I remember the Sandinista
Yeah.
revolution. And by 1990, the United States did what it did in Chile,
Yeah.
or the Israelis did what the US did in Chile. They made the economy scream.
Yeah.
And then the people voted out the Sandinistas in the election. So that could certainly be explained. I remember when I was in Gaza, I don't remember what year now, but I remember a few people saying to me, now is not the time to elect Hamas. Now was not the time to elect it because immediately as it was elected, the sanctions, the
Yeah.
blockade
Okay. Yeah.
was created. So it's perfectly plausible that the people were completely alienated from Hamas, and that was what all reports seemed to say. Ken Roth wrote in the Guardian that Hamas is Gaza was under military dictatorship for the last 15 years. Well, actually, Ken, that's not exactly right. What happened was there was an election. It was a completely honest and fair election, as attested to by Jimmy Carter. And then the blockade was instituted. And the purpose of the blockade was to turn the people against against Hamas. And that's what happened. He leaves that part out, that they were never given a chance. Exactly what happened to Morsi in Egypt, never given a chance. But let's
Right.
leave that aside. 2 points. Number one, you talk about the Hamas as being completely separated from the people. But I'm talking about those 1,500 young men who were killed after they burst the gates of Gaza. Are they just blind followers of Hamas orders? Or were they like the Nat Turner rebellion? People, young men, like yourself, actually much younger than you now, young men who were born into a concentration camp, who just like Nat Turner, the rage inside them because of the chasm between who they were, who they aspired to be, and the reality that till their last breath, they would be confined to a concentration camp. So instead of talking about Hamas in the abstract and their agency, let's talk about the people, the 1,500 young men who nobody gives a darn about. Everybody talks about the 1,400 Israelis who were killed. And yes, it was an atrocity. I said that on the first day. But what about those 1,500 young men who were born into a concentration camp? And on top of being born into a concentration camp, periodically, that diabolical regime would announce with no shame, and the entire world would receive with no shame, that diabolical, and I'll say it, that satanic regime would announce, we're going to mow the lawn in Gaza. Do you know how pathological, how totally sick it is to talk about mowing the lawn on a population confined in a concentration camp, and half of whom are children? And nobody even recoils. We all laugh, a little titter of laugh at Israel's use of the expression mowing the lawn in Gaza. Isn't that cute? Isn't that funny, to mow the lawn? And how many of those 1,500 people lost a grandmother, lost a grandfather, lost a sister, lost a brother, lost a nephew, lost a niece, lost their home? Their home. How would you feel if your apartment was flattened? Would you need the Hamas leadership to inspire you in a rage? Or would the rage be there already